States, Canada, and Tokyo, Japan. This is the Rich Stevens Radio Network.
All right, here we go. Thank you so much for tuning in. Rich Stevens, that's R-I-C-H, by the way. Still get called Rick often. I don't know why, but it's Rich, R-I-C-H, Stevens with a V. And if you want to get to the website, richstevensshow.com. Lots of things to talk about today. According to Rachel Maddow, there is fairly good secondhand hearsay evidence from Donald Trump's maid that his chauffeur said that his valet heard him say that he burned down Cheryl's she shed. I couldn't resist. These people on the left are so out of control. It is ridiculous. And now we know that the House plans to vote on Thursday. This is for a resolution to formalize and to put in place goalposts for the impeachment inquiry of President Donald Trump. Now, the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, yesterday sent out a letter to Democratic House lawmakers that said, quote, affirms the ongoing existing investigation and establishes the procedure for future moves in the probe. And then she goes on to say, we are taking this step to eliminate any doubt as to whether the Trump administration may withhold documents, prevent witness testimony, disregard duly authorized subpoenas, or continue obstructing the House of Representatives. It seems like Nancy wants to make sure that the Democrats have all their, I guess you could say all their ducks in a row before they move forward. But maybe the Democrats should consider or reconsider this stuff because, we just took out the head of ISIS, and that was under President Donald Trump's watch. So, hello, wake up. And by the way, speaking of the ISIS leader, the president stuck to his decision to purposely leave Democrats out of the loop, about the raid that killed the ISIS leader. And yesterday he claimed that he was fearful that at least one lawmaker might leak the plot. And when the president was questioned about when he didn't fill in House Speaker Nancy Pelosi about the military plan, the president went off on House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, who's working on the Democrats' impeachment inquiry, of course. Now, Trump said yesterday, before he boarded Air Force One on a trip to Chicago, he said, quote, I think Adam Schiff is the biggest leaker in Washington. You know that. I know that. We all know that. I've watched Adam Schiff leak. He's a corrupt politician. He's a leaker like nobody's ever seen before. But here's the funny part of the story. The president did alert a number of top Republicans and foreign governments, including the Russians. And that's why everybody is, in such a tizzy, I guess you can say, over who knew what and when and all this kind of stuff. With all these leaks that come out on the left side, tons of stuff. We could go back and just, there's too many to name. Why would you take a chance on something as big as this? And by the way, yesterday was really nice that the president tweeted a picture of the canine that cornered this guy, literally cornered him. And it was right before he blew up his suicide vest. The dog was slightly injured, but he's already okay and back on the job. Now, they can't reveal, it's secret, just like any other. The canine is a member of the armed forces. And just like a police canine has a dog and wears a badge, I don't know if you realize this, but if you get bitten by a police dog, that's the same as getting arrested. So in this case, with this canine who's part of the Army Delta Force, which is the elite wing of the United States Army, they can't reveal his name. That's top secret classified. And the reason being is because if they reveal the name, then the owner or the handler, I guess is a better way to put it, could be identified. And these upper echelon Army military people, men and women, are supposed to be a secret, part of the Army, just like the people that took out bin Laden, and that was a totally different branch of the military. They all remain secret, for the most part anyway. Speaking of secrets, there's a petition. This isn't really a secret. Maybe it is. There's a petition that has more than almost 200,000 signatures on it right now to get the United States government to officially move the date of Halloween from October 31st to the last Saturday in October. It doesn't look like this is going to happen, but the people behind it have They're trying a different way. Instead of moving Halloween, they just want to make it a new holiday. And they want to call it National Trick or Treat Day, and it would be on the final Saturday of October. And it's been added, apparently, to the National Day Calendar website. I don't know what that's worth. I've never heard about that. But, it does have a slight chance of catching on and becoming a real thing, some experts are saying. I guess we have to wait and see. Or everyone's going to totally forget about this after Thursday and won't remember until next year sometime, probably in September. But it is what it is. This past weekend, everybody had their Halloween parties prior to Halloween. And so this whole week is all kinds of things related to Halloween. And the official day of Halloween is, of course, the 31st. Now, I understand why some people make their parties on the weekend because they couldn't do it during the week because the next day would be work and yada, yada, yada. I get that. But, it's just, can't we just leave things as they are and as they were and just leave it alone instead of trying to make a mountain out of a molehill, literally? I mean, come on, really? Speaking of Halloween stuff, there's a dating site, dating.com, and they did a survey on ghosting, and it has nothing to do with Halloween. Ghosting is where instead of you just blowing somebody off, you just, poof, disappear, and you stop returning the text messages. 75% of people who are currently single admitted that they have in fact ghosted someone before. 92% said it's been done to them at least once. And let me tell you some more quick stats. 48% of people who've been ghosted still have no clue why. The three most common reasons for ghosting someone are you lost interest, the sparks didn't fly on the first date, and you didn't look like their profile picture when they showed up for the so-called date. 88% of ghosters agree that it's just easier than confronting the person and breaking it off, so just disappear. 78% of people who've ghosted someone say they've probably will end up doing it again, so most of us don't feel too bad about it, apparently. But a few signs I can give you, kind of like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a prerequisite that it's about to happen. In other words, that you're going to get ghosted is they stop returning texts as much, or their replies are a lot shorter than they were when you first started talking. And when you want to hang out, they're always unavailable. And they've stopped. This is a big one. They stopped liking your posts on social media. So those are the signs that you might be about to get ghosted. Is that even English, what I just said? You might be about to get ghosted. You might be ghosted soon. Whatever. You get the point. And speaking of Halloween, there's a website, candystore.com. And every year they do this. They do a study on the most popular Halloween candy in every state. And I got to tell you, I was really surprised at some of these stats because, one would think that just right now, can you just imagine what the favorite candy is in every state? Well, don't even try because it's not going to work out. They base the results on candy sales in the few months leading up to Halloween. They've actually done this for like the past 12, 13 years. Here it comes. Skittles won more states than Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Candy corn is number one in 5 states. Are you kidding me? Saltwater taffy and hot tamales both won 3 states. I don't know about you, but this whole Michigas has got me all confused because where's Kit Kat on this list? I love Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, but Kit Kat's not even here. Now, nationwide, the Halloween candy that people have bought the most over the last 12 years, Skittles. I mean, that's just mind-blowing. I don't even think I've ever had Skittles. And the rest of the top 10 are Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, M&M's, Snickers, Starburst, candy corn, hot tamales, Tootsie Pops, Sour Patch Kids, and Hershey's chocolate. As I said, what the hell happened to the Kit Kat bars? Give me a break. That? Where is it? Not even in the picture at all. To me, that's quite surprising. So, I don't know. Maybe just times aren't like when I was, excuse me, when I was a kid in trick-or-treating, I remember this like it was yesterday. I actually remember, people would be going through the building, and when somebody and we went to the houses on the street too, of course, not just in the building, the apartment buildings, but when we would knock on somebody's door and somebody would have a full-size candy bar, oh my God, we had to tell everybody else that we ran into and said, hey, you got to go to 602 because they have full-size candy bars, because everybody started handing out those miniature things when they came out years ago. And people still do that, and then there's some people that have like a bowl, and you put your hand in a bowl and you take a handful or something like that. And I remember my mom saying to me, don't be greedy now. And then the other thing that might surprise you, might not be, but I remember when I was 7 years old, I got a lot of candy, a lot of candy, because we went on a trick-or-treat run for several hours. And then what I did the next day is I sold the candy on the street. And I got a whopping $7.36 for all the candy. I then took that $7.36 and I sent it to the United Nations for, I can't remember what the name of the organization was, but something that they help kids with. And it was, it's something I wanted to do. 7 years old, mind you. And by the way, the next day in the New York Daily News and the New York Post, there was an article about myself and two other friends that I roped into this and how we sent this $7.36, which I sent in cash. My mother wanted to write me a check. My father wanted to write me a check. And I said, no. I want to send the cash. And I got a really nice letter back from somebody at the United Nations. I forgot who was in charge back then, but it was very interesting. And I learned a lot from that lesson because that was the first time that my name was in the newspapers, and I knew that I liked it. So I had the bug early, way early, 7 years old, $7.36. And I can't remember, I'm sure I'll remember it, but I can't remember right now what the name of the organization was at the United Nations, but it was apparently a big deal. You might have a lot of friends on Facebook, do you? But how many of these friends do you actually have? Because they're the ones who really appreciate you. The reason I bring this up is there's this woman I think she's in Denver. She posted a mom blog last week after one of her friends drove about 40 miles to come help her out. And her post inspired a new term. It's trending now in social media, quote, your on the way friends. These are your true friends who will literally drop everything to help you. How many of those do you have on your Facebook list right now? Think about that. So she was overwhelmed with being a mom and with life, in general. So she called a friend to vent, maybe cry a little bit. Then she said she really didn't want to be alone. And her friend immediately said, don't worry, I'm on my way. And then she actually tried to talk her friend out of it and said things like, my house is a mess. I don't want to, burden you. But the friend wasn't having it. So she drove 30 miles to get there. This is the friend. And she picked up another friend on the way, and she brought lunch over, and they cleaned her whole house for her. So that's why the term on the way friends is trending the last 48 hours. It's inspiring people to think of who their on the way friends are and to be that friend to someone else if they need it. I know I have one friend that I can think of, or at least I want to think of, that she would fit into that category. I think she would. I hope to God I never have to lean on her for something like this. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I have another friend who lives too far away, but I know if he lived closer, he would do it. There's no doubt at all. So, by the way, speaking of doing things, if you have an iPhone 5, you need to update the software. Otherwise, it's going to stop working on Sunday. Let me repeat this again. This only applies if you have an iPhone 5, and I know a lot of people do. iPhone 5s, after midnight on Sunday, which is November 3rd, if you don't update, you're not going to be able to connect to the internet unless you update to iOS 10.3.4. And if you have an iPhone 4S, why? If you do, or even an older than a 4S, and even an iPad, you're also going to need to update the software on your devices. You see, the problem is stemmed from this bug, a GPS bug, which only happens once every 19 years. And what happens is it causes some of these Apple devices to lose track of time. So the bug fixes were applied to Apple software iOS 10.3.4 and iOS 9.3.6 and later. So if you haven't updated, you're going to face some serious problems. So, again, if you have an Apple iPhone 5 or anything before that, you got to update your phone before midnight on Sunday, November 3rd. By the way, speaking of time, this is the weekend we set the clocks back. And, it's obviously getting darker earlier and earlier, so, you know that that's coming. But what I still don't understand is, actually, I do understand. We here in Florida voted to keep the time one way. And I think it was if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the spring forward, and not to change the clocks, this time of year and just leave it like that. Now, even though we voted unanimously in the state of Florida, it still has to be approved by Congress. And because Congress is all entangled in all these fakakta, investigate. Everybody's under investigation. Everybody. It's not just the president, it's everybody. They still have an investigation going on that congresswoman in California that I told you about yesterday resigned via a video on Sunday. She's not even there anymore, and they're still doing an investigation. Anything to waste money, anything to not get out, and to just stay, it's unbelievable. There should be truly some kind of oversight committee that looks at these things that they investigate and say, you know what, you've been doing this too long. I mean, it just really doesn't make sense. It's kind of like, what's happening with this impeachment crap. And tomorrow they're supposed to, tomorrow? Yeah, I think Wednesday or is it Thursday? I think it's tomorrow, Wednesday. They have another witness who has come forward and said that he actually made a complaint with the National Security Agency that he didn't feel comfortable listening to this call. Why are people coming forward now and all of a sudden showing up? Do you not think that that's a little bit strange? It's just as strange as the whistleblower, the one who brought all this to the forefront, poof, gone, ghosted. I mean, we're never going to hear testimony from this person. Some people say, well, we don't need his testimony or her testimony anymore because everything's been validated. And that's not true. Everything has not been validated. It's been validated if you believe what the New York Times spits out or the Washington Post or MSNBC or CNN. Then it's been validated. Otherwise, it's not been validated. I mean, this is just past ridiculous at this point. And whether you are a fan of President Trump or you're not a fan, you should sit back and look at what a farce this whole thing is. It's kind of like last night. Was it last night or night before? At the no, it wasn't last night. It was the night before. At the Washington Nationals Astro game in Washington D.C., where the president goes, the president of the United States, and then he gets booed when they introduce him. And people start yelling out, lock him up, lock him up. I don't care if you like the president or not. He is still the president of the United States and deserves respect, no matter what he's done. And that goes for any president. I've mentioned this before on this broadcast that I was not fond of George W. Bush, but when I met George W. Bush and I got to go on Air Force One for a little ride, I was in awe. I was in heaven. I thought he was the greatest person on the planet because I'm in the presence of the President of the United States. And I would have done the same thing with President Obama. I've never said anything bad about President Obama. I was not a fan. But you have to respect the office of the President of the United States. Give me a break. All right, I need to calm down a little bit. Doctor said no stress. Calm down, Rich. Calm down. Calm down. All right, calm down. I was just telling you about those Apple phones, and there's something else to do with Apple, but this is real apples. There's a company in Michigan is recalling apples because of it could be Listeria contamination in these apples. They're called North Bay Produce, and they say that I eat apples every day. Included in this recall are McIntosh, Honeycrisp, Fuji, and Red Delicious apples. Of that list, McIntosh and Fuji are my favorite. I've never had a Honeycrisp. And Red Delicious, it's iffy. But anyway, these were the ones that were sold in plastic bags under the brand Great Lakes. That's, I believe, Walmart. North Bay Produce, Pure Michigan, and also unbranded in clear plastic kind of bags. If it's unbranded, how do you know who it comes from? Anyway, the reason I bring this up is because these apples were shipped to right here in Florida, also Kentucky, Illinois, Michigan, Louisiana, Texas, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. So if you have McIntosh, McIntosh, Honeycrisp, Fuji, or Red Delicious apples, again, plastic bags under the brands Great Lakes, North Bay Produce, Pure Michigan, and the unbranded, like no writing on it, I guess, clear plastic tote bags. So give them back to the store and get your money back, because Listeria is nothing to fool around with. And speaking of nothing to fool around with, I thought this kind of stuff only happens in Florida. Did you happen to see last night in the news that bus, the city bus in Pittsburgh, that was literally up in the air after a sinkhole opened up during rush hour, and the bus ended up in the sinkhole? The bus was actually stopped at a red light, and the sinkhole opened up at the back half of the bus, and the bus just plunged into it. I mean, first when I saw these pictures on social, I thought that this was just some kind of meme that somebody made up, but it actually happened in Pittsburgh during the busy rush hour. The amazing part about this is nobody was seriously injured. That is a miracle in itself. I mean, that's really, truly unbelievable. Speaking of unbelievable, a guy in Tampa was arrested because he threw a pair of nunchucks at a car during a road rage attack. He's 56 years old. He said he was cut off by a white van while he was driving. So he got mad, and he threw his nunchucks at the van, which shattered the driver's rear window on the car. He was arrested. Several charges, including throwing a deadly missile into an occupied car. I mean, did you ever think that a pair of nunchucks would be considered a deadly missile? And then there was another story involving a car, and this one is, again, pretty just unbelievable. Two people inside the car ended up in 8 feet underwater after they had a little bit of a mishap parking the car. You see, they were trying to park in a church parking lot when they hit the gas pedal instead of the brake. It sent the car up a grassy hill, over a tree stump, through a fence, and bam, right into a swimming pool. Now, both people in the car got out safely of the pool on their own with no help, and then the car had to be lifted out of the pool by, of course, a crane. So they drove right into the pool. Luckily, they didn't drown. There is some good news in this story. Ready? It's amazing news, too. The amazing news is that it did not happen here in Florida. Some of these things that happen, I mean, it's just unbelievable. That's happened several times here in Florida. South Florida, it's happened. By the way, speaking of Halloween, we're talking about, and we're going to talk about it all week probably, I'm sorry. But the experts are saying, do not make common mistakes this Halloween. Do not hand out toothbrushes. Who the hell hands out toothbrushes? Even my dentist wouldn't hand out toothbrushes. But the list of do's and don'ts include, don't be cheap with candy, like don't give out like one piece of candy per kid kind of thing. Do not let your daughter dress up like Miley Cyrus, or don't dress your little kid up as anything sexy at all, because reputations in elementary school, they last past elementary school. And don't hand out dental floss either, even if you come from a family of dentists. And skip the candy and a toothbrush deal, which comes off like you're lecturing. You don't want to do anything like that, because that's just I mean, again, you would think that some of these things, I remember two things that I was talking about before that occurred when I was a kid. I'm talking about growing up in the Bronx, less than 10 years old. One thing was people used to give out apples. And that seemed to me, as a 7, 8, 9-year-old kid, even 10 years old, that was ridiculous. I mean, why would you want to give out an apple? And here's the thing. I'll never forget, my friend Bruce got an apple. When we went to that door, he took it. I didn't want it. I had no interest in it. My friend Ross didn't have an interest in it either. But Bruce took the apple. And for some reason, my mother said that don't eat that apple. And she said, when we came back to the house, she said, let me see the apple. And she cut the apple in half. And wouldn't you know it, there were stick pins in the apple. Stick pins in the apple. Now, we couldn't remember which door we got it from, but this, I mean, if he would have taken a bite into that apple, it could have killed him with these pins. I think you call them straight pins. And I remember there was 12 pins in the apple throughout the entire apple, and they were so small the way they went in, you couldn't tell from the outside that they were in there. So apples was something we never accepted, and after that, it was just a no-no. The other thing that I never understood, there was an older lady, and it's funny because I remember the apartment. She was in 409. And for some reason, she did this every Halloween, and every Halloween we knocked on her door. I don't know why, but she would put a handful of pennies in your bag. You know, when somebody opens the door, you go, trick or treat, and they open the door, and they say, oh, what are you supposed to be? I remember the people behind the door always, oh, what are you supposed to be? And, UNICEF was what that's what I was just reminding myself. That's who I sent the money to the United Nations for, UNICEF. And the reason I just remembered that, because I remember one year, my costume was a UNICEF box, that you put money in to donate. But anyway, that was, when somebody opens the door and says, who you're supposed to be, I'm a UNICEF box. How do you not see? It's UNICEF. There's a, place to put money. Anyway, so this woman in 409 every year would put a handful of pennies in your bag. You'd open the bag, then they'd put stuff in. And it's a little bit different today where you grab your own stuff from what I've seen on television. But imagine, here's a handful of pennies. Really? It never excited me as a kid. I don't know why. Now, if I opened my bag and you put in like $20 bills, I think I would have been excited. But pennies? Who gets excited over that? Who even thinks of doing that? I mean, were you a kid and got pennies and actually excited about it? I mean, to me, it just doesn't, I don't know, it really didn't excite me. So maybe I was different. But as I said, my friends that I went trick-or-treating with, they weren't excited by this either. So it wasn't just me. All right, listen, thank you so much for listening to The Rich Stevens Show. You want to reach out and get in touch? I would love to hear from you. You can go to Rich, R-I-C-H, Stevens with a V, richstevensshow.com. You can find all kinds of stuff there. By the way, I started putting up some more pictures, like old pictures that I just found, which some celebrity pictures, which are pretty cool. But you get a lot of other stuff there, too. richstevensshow.com, or you could call me or text 305-707-7878, 305-707-7878. Thanks so much for listening to The Rich Stevens Show.